Hey folks, welcome back to the Weighted Native Chronicles. You might be wondering why a channel largely dedicated to hunting and firearms, among other things, is suddenly talking about politics. Well, the reality is that politics is now threatening these very pursuits. The Canadian Liberal Party, instead of enacting and enforcing laws that reduce violent crime, appears intent on scapegoating law-abiding firearms owners and hunters for political gain. Their strategy? Scare urban dwellers in crime-ridden cities like Toronto into believing they need the Liberal Party to protect them, despite the fact that the vast majority of firearms-related crimes are committed by criminals who will continue acquiring handguns and various firearms illegally anyways. What we're talking about today is the long-held concept of ownership. Take, for example, this restricted firearm. I own it. It's mine, right? Well, that now depends on how you define owning something. The latest order in council declared that I can no longer sell this gun. Once I pass away, I won't even be able to hand it down to my heirs. Does being allowed to temporarily possess something and not be able to sell it sound like ownership to you? It's interesting that this same pattern of government overreach extends beyond firearms to Alberta's resource sector, where Ottawa's policies again attempt to erase the concept of ownership. Because of infringements like these, voters in Alberta are increasingly angered and frustrated, leading to a significant upswell in separatist sentiment. Many Albertans now openly discuss whether the province should separate from Canada altogether. Given this growing debate, I feel it is crucial to provide relevant information on this issue of ownership. That's why today I'm examining the important question, what does ownership consist of? By the way, if you appreciate this content and want to keep conversations like this going, please consider supporting the channel. You can do so by subscribing, clicking like, turning notifications on, and if you wish, using the super thanks button at the bottom of the video or buying me a coffee using the link in the description. Every bit of support helps. Also, let me know in the comments whether you'd like to see more content like this or if you prefer that I stick to the usual topics, okay? Your feedback really does matter. Alberta's resource wealth has long been a point of contention between the province and the federal government. Who truly owns Alberta's natural resources? Do they belong to the province or to Canada as a whole? In today's video, I'm diving into the legal, historical, and political sides of this debate, so stick around. It's going to be an eye-opener. To understand this issue, we have to go back to 1930. Before that, Alberta's natural resources were controlled by the federal government. But the Natural Resources Transfer Agreement changed that, granting Alberta ownership over its lands and resources. Section 92A of the Constitution Act 1982 also reaffirms provincial control over non-renewable resources. So legally speaking, Alberta owns its resources, kind of like I do my gun, but that's not the end of the story. Despite this clear legal framework, conflicts still arise when Ottawa imposes policies that impact Alberta's resource sector, like carbon pricing, emissions caps, or restrictions on new energy projects. The federal government argues that environmental regulation and trade fall under its jurisdiction. Alberta, on the other hand, sees this as federal overreach. So where is the line? Federal interference crosses the line when policies imposed by Ottawa, such as carbon pricing, emissions caps, and moratoriums on new energy products, effectively strip Alberta, just like it does firearms owners, of its ability to sell the resources it owns. By creating regulations that supersede provincial authority, the federal government diminishes Alberta's control, making ownership of resources totally meaningless in practice. This raises serious concerns about constitutional violations and economic consequences for the province. This isn't just a legal fight, it's an economic and political battle. Alberta's economy heavily depends on its resources, and when federal policies restrict development, it affects jobs, investment, and provincial revenue. Some argue that Ottawa's actions contravene Alberta's rights, while others claim federal oversight is needed to ensure long-term environmental sustainability. But why is it that just the federal government is responsible for such things? Alberta has just as much interest in protecting its environment, given that its economy and people depend on the land and water. In fact, the province has implemented its own environmental policies and regulations that often exceed federal standards. Shouldn't Alberta be given more credit for managing its own resources responsibility? What do you think? The answer isn't black and white. Legally, Alberta owns its resources, but federal influence through environmental laws, taxation, and trade policies complicates matters. The real question is, in the same way that it reduces ownership of firearms to words with no meaning, should the federal government have the power to also restrict Alberta's resource development to such an extent that its ownership of resources also means nothing? At base, this seems to be an expression of the unelected World Economic Forum's position, stating, "You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy." So, what do you think is right, Alberta or Ottawa/World Economic Forum? Let me know in the comments, and if you found this video helpful and informative, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching The Way to Native Chronicles, and I'll see you in the next one. Did you like this video? If you did, I think you're going to like this one right over here. So check it out. And I appreciate your subscribing if you haven't done so already. Remember to do that while you're watching this next video. Click like, it all helps us out for this channel. Catch you next time.